realize that. When you're sleeping, you think that I won't know what your name is. But actually, the grade roster, I have the mugshots of all the students. So essentially, what I'm going to do, what our plan, grand plan is, over this weekend, we're going to train this neural network with the mugshots of all the past students and the eventual grades they got. Okay, and then I will show your mugshots to the ConvNet, and then predict the grade, and it will be within 81 to 95% accuracy. And I think it cuts down a lot of work for everybody concerned. So that's pretty much what we are planning to do for this course. Okay. So I might as well use, if you're an AI, we should be using the great fruits of AI. After all, everything that's important can be read in your face by the ConvNet, right? By the way, I don't know whether I need to explain things like sarcasm in this class, but so if you are going to go to some authorities and say Rao is being racist and sexist and also wants to reduce his work, it's only the last part that is true. Just don't reduce my work. Everything else is not necessarily true. Okay, so there are actually, so in fact, one of the points of this is AI is so much in the public realm right now that it becomes very, very hard to figure out. Hopefully some of your friends are asking about this if they heard that you're taking a tutorial AI course. What is all this nonsense? Can you do this? And anyway, to give some credit, put this in somewhat a nuanced perspective, what this particular recent study did was that they took people's photographs from dating websites where people they put up their photograph and self-identify their sexuality. Okay, so they took it, I guess, from various dating websites and then trained the ConvNet, held out data, kept some of the photographs, with the self-identified sexuality from the testing case, and then training case, they did the training, and then they checked in the testing case with this additional held out data, and they got about 87 or 81% accuracy. And apparently, there is this whole conventional wisdom of gaydar, where apparently people just look at people's faces and then can tell whether or not, what their sexuality is. Again, these start numbers that the people basically guessing it is apparently only being 61% accurate, whereas this thing is 81% accurate. Now, what the writers of the paper, this is a Stanford psychology professor and probably an intro to AI student who knows how to use ConvNets. And in fact, this is not that hard. By the way, there was a high school project I heard of, which basically trained a network to predict the age of the person. Okay, for example, basically people can guess whether you are like 5 years old, or 15 years old, or 95 years old, just by looking at your face. And you can't quite tell what we are using in coming to that conclusion. Again, this is one of these implicit pieces of knowledge we have. We look at the face and we somehow guess the age. And so similarly, these guys were trying to apparently guess the sexuality. And then they were 81% accurate. And so they wrote this paper essentially putting lots and lots and lots of caveats saying, look, we are only doing it because we are the good guys. And we are trying to tell you that there is a lot of information about people that's available to Googles and Facebooks and everybody right now. At least your faces are available. Okay? And so they may well be using it and they won't tell you that they are using it. We are doing this research to tell you this is a possibility. Now that's what the actual writers of the research paper said. And this paper actually was reviewed in the Journal of Psychology and Personality or something like that. It's a reputable journal. And then of course it got published, and the entire public media essentially jumped on this, saying AI now does this too. Okay, and then of course apparently there's been a huge backlash from the gay and lesbian community, saying this is not nice. This is actually, you're acting as if you are doing as a favor, but you're essentially sort of, probably doing a lot more to sort of perpetuate stereotypes. Okay, but again, one of the interesting questions is it's actually a very, very nuanced problem here. You have to understand, for example, in this particular case, people have posted their photographs self-identifying their sexuality. It's not just random people walking around. Okay, and you could actually, so one of the big issues, and this came up in some of the talks that I forced you to watch before the class started, including the rise of AI. One of the problems is you don't actually know what the ConvNet is focusing on in this photograph. Okay, so in fact, when people post a photograph saying, I have this particular property, they probably will choose among all their photographs, the one photograph that they think will telegraph this to other humans. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right? If you want to say, that if you want to put like a dating profile and say, I'm a cerebral professor, not that I'm doing it, and then basically you're not going to put like a beach volleyball picture of you. You'll probably put some working extremely hard on some AI project, okay, picture. So it's essentially you are already sending some signals to other humans, and that's what this might be actually picking up. We don't know what actually is happening. But that's another of these problems of interpretability. And it also basically just opens up this entire issue of, are these people right in even doing this research? Or did they actually wind up doing quote unquote forbidden research? Do you understand what I'm saying? You never thought that we'll talk about this kind of stuff in a computer science course, let alone in an AI course, but all of a sudden now that's what's happening. The entire week, this is the kind of discussion that's been going on in all sorts of public media. First there was this huge euphoria that AI can do one more thing, and then there's a huge backlash saying, how the heck did you guys decide to do this? And then now there's a huge small pushback saying, look, we are showing that this can be done, and because we can do it and we are putting it in the open research, at least you know that this is something that other people are likely to be able to do without telling you. Okay? Again, no simple answers, but it's worth keeping in mind. In fact, one of the other very interesting questions about this sort of interaction is it's becoming easier to essentially, so one of the things is people take privacy in public spaces for granted. Okay, so you essentially, let's say, you go to some kind of a rally for some politician, maybe a ultra right-wing or ultra left-wing politician, you will hope that basically this is not going to be connected to your LinkedIn page, okay, one way or other. But then now there are just many photographs being taken of everybody, high-res photographs, and there are machines that can basically do, Facebook basically does face identification. There's some interesting work that's going on that shows that even if you actually put like a hat to kind of partially obscure your face, you can still be seen. The machine can reconstruct your rest of your face and say, yeah, that's raw, all right. And then at that end of that, now one of the huge issues in all of these things is, remember I said 81%? 81%, in case you don't realize, is not 100%. Right? Which basically means there are false positives as well as false negatives. For sexuality there is really no end, there's no false positive, false negative issue. But there is, but in the sense it's not the life-ending issue. Okay? But terrorist versus non-terrorist, that's going to be a pretty life-ending issue. If I'm the false positive for somebody's terrorist detection algorithm, which apparently most of the time I am, especially if I have a mustache or something, then I'm going to have a pretty hard life. Okay? And the machine says, look, 81% of the time I'm right, so why do we care about Rao's feelings? And this whole issue essentially is this issue of who pays for the errors. And the false positives, the errors of the false positives that these machines are making, the society is paying for the errors because individuals who get basically misclassified are paying for those errors. And that's why we need to be very careful as to whether or not these things are being should be. Okay, anyway, so that's that. AI-based grading scheme is going to happen. So at end of today's class, I'm going to run. So actually, there's not going to be any office hours. If you have like a very quick question, you can ask. But otherwise, I'm going to be gone. To catch a flight. There is a CHM panel, computer history vision panel on relationship with AI. If you didn't get enough of my face for the day, you can also watch the live streaming of it from Facebook. I assure you that I'm going to completely different dress. So, I'm going to use Bollywood props and stuff. So, maybe you will have fun doing that. Then what else? So, one other thing is I actually will try to do this class in a state and not jumping about manner because I need to preserve my enthusiasm. Unfortunately, this happens to be a class on game trees. So it's actually quite an exciting topic. So we'll try our best to try and see if I can preserve my energy for the evening. Okay. A couple of Socratic things before we go forward. Let me just do this. So I'm just going to do quick surveys. Okay. So I'm going to do like 3 small questions about the project as well as the pace of the class. Again, this, even though this is actually when you give your answer, you are actually telling me who you are. But I'm going to do multiple choice question, and as you know, we can't actually store the multiple choice question answers. Okay, so it's basically anonymous. So you can actually speak your mind. You're not even raising your hand. So for example, if you're one of those people who are nowhere near done about the project, or much worse, one of those people who have already done, and you want to identify yourself by raising your hands, there would be bloodbath. Actually, people will kill you because so, but you can do it. You can speak truth. Okay. So that's basically because this is going to be an anonymous, essentially an anonymous survey because I'm not going to keep the records. I can't actually keep the records for the multiple choice questions. That's why, if you remember, for the attendance, I take short answer question. Okay, fine. So go ahead and let's see if I can start. Actually, people are already doing this. So all I'm going to do is take a picture of it myself so that I have an approximate idea. 101. So 96 people have answered this. 97. So there are only 1 or 2 people actually in the class right now. Yes, so we probably have to take it. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to show it to you so you can also see what it is. What is the current status? Okay. So 39% of the people are almost done. Already done, not almost done. 39% are already done. 16% are almost done. 24% are expecting that they will be done by Friday, which is the deadline. 14% need more time, and 7% are in big trouble. Okay, basically they are nowhere near done. Okay, so notice now that this is where the class is, and it makes no sense for us to just willy-nilly extend deadlines because most of you are on the way. Okay, and so you should make sure that you talk to, if you are stuck, if you are one of the D and E categories, I don't know who you are by the way, as I said, you make sure that you talk to the TAs and UGTAs to get the help you need. Okay, and one other thing I want to point out is we split project 1 into project 1 part 1 and part 2. So that part 1 really is an easier way to get started, and part 2 will actually have A-star search and heuristics. Okay, and I am likely to be, so there was this other thing I will send about the flexibility in deadlines, etc., which I'll send a mail. The usual thing I do is I'll give everybody 5 days that they can use at any time. 5 full days of late submission that you can use. For example, you can use all 5 of them for the project 1 part 1, in which case you will never have any more extensions available for you unless the entire class gets extension. Okay, so these are things that my dog ate my, project and I need to do the whole project again. My heart really breaks in those cases, but so, I'll say use one of your 5 days. That's what I will. So I'll send a mail officially, but that's the way that works. And it's by honor system, you keep track of how many days you have used. And then you send some sort of a private message to the piazza. So that's how we know that you haven't, used 25 of your 5 days. Okay, you know what I mean. Okay, so that's one thing that we will do. And the other thing is, for those of the people who have, in this category, if they have like a good reason that, probably they should come and talk to us, and there may well be a possibility that I would, for example, if those of the people in this basically are completely new to programming, I don't know in which case, I don't know why you're taking this course, or Python, but you know something else, I am willing to consider possibility of letting you submit both part 1 and part 2 by the part 2 deadline, so that gives you a little more breathing space, but then there will be a penalty. Okay, but this is not done unless I specifically tell you that I'm going to do it for you. So I have to have a good reason for this. On the other hand, if you just want to take an extra day or 2, you will have 5 days from that you can take, and you can just say, okay? Any questions on that? Yes?
The due time is at
11:59. Okay, so the next question I am going to do is, about the pace of the lecture. Okay. So once again, remember that this is, even though you are in front of me, I don't know what you are saying, so you don't need to worry about being easily identified. As we say, this is as good as it gets, because once you go out, Facebook is taking pictures of you and analyzing what you're doing. So this is the maximum privacy you are ever going to get in your life today. So I am not going to know who said what, but this is, I'm going to change the question so you can start. So this is the question right now. So I finish that one. Okay. So it's only A, B, and C. Okay. And again, once again, I'll show you what you said, and that's our test. 188 have answered. Okay, for those of you who are answering B and E, there are no B and E. This is like the Simpsons thing where the guy puts C for a true-false question. I don't understand what's going on. Okay, I'm going to. Okay, let me show you what I'm seeing here. Okay, so 66% seem to think it's just the right pace, and 20% think it's going too fast. I don't know who these people are, and 10% think it's going too slow, and those are the only ones who are actually paying attention. I perpetually think that I'm going way too slow. So I'm more worried about going too slow than going too fast. Apparently, I'm constitutionally incapable of going too fast. So I always come with 98 slides to cover and cover like 3 in the class and then go home. So my worry is not only that, I'm worried about B people, that is the people who think it's going slow and that they're going to work to death. So again, we have costs for everything. I'm just telling you my cost. I'm much more affected by somebody who gets bored to death because I'm going too slow than by people who are scampering to keep up with me, especially because I tend to be quite slow. Okay, by my own introspective analysis. Okay, but that tells me that more or less things are okay. Again, remember, one of the biggest advantages of AI, hopefully in the end, is that you don't have to have lectures. you'll all have personal tutors. In fact, even bigger advantage is that we don't actually have to learn, computers will learn and do stuff, but that's a different story. But the reality is everybody learns at a different pace in a different way, and lectures are made so that it's efficient, but efficiency has nothing to do with effectiveness for individuals. So it's understood that it's extremely hard to get 100%, of anything in lectures. So you have to, in some sense, look for the majority being reasonably happy, and that's what we can hope for. Okay, but I will say that, and that's one thing. Personalized tutoring systems hopefully will eventually be the greatest contribution of AI. In addition to, of course, predicting your sexuality. Okay, the third question that I'm going to do today before we go forward is this question. Again, remember, these are all anonymous. I don't have any, who said what, even if I wanted to find out. Okay, are the lectures, videos watched before, and the text read before or after? There's like a bunch of places where you're getting information, right? Are these things presumably complementing each other? So the question is, are they meshing well and complementing each other nicely? Are they getting super confusing? Are they getting super repetitive, somewhat repetitive and boring? Again, you can speak your mind, I can take it, and I won't know your name, so that's the other. So let me finish this and go to the multiple choice question. Okay. Okay, so 87 of 104 people, 90. Yeah, while I really don't need to know who is saying what in the ABC, I'm dying to find out who is saying D&D. Unfortunately, since I said, that tells you this is truly anonymous. I'm really dying to find out who is saying D&D, but I still can't tell it anonymous. Okay. Yeah, I know, my class has rules. Okay, so I'm going to stop this. I'm going to draw a picture of this. I'm showing you what I'm seeing. Okay, once again, most of the, I think 53% of the people think that they're meshing well and they're complementing each other. 19% think that they're getting super confusing. That's a good thing, and in fact, perhaps you can use the SurveyMonkey to send me any more information as to why it's getting confusing. I realize that I'm providing more than one channel of communication, and so it would be, if there's something that I can do to improve it, I'll try to do that. And then the last C, once again, that's the one that I'm always worried about. Somewhat repetitive and boring. That's about 23%. Okay. So that's where things are. That's useful information for me, but hopefully also useful information for you. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, since we did all these three, I'm going to finish this, and then I'm going to open short answer question and say, so the question is, what clip did we see? Okay, you can just say Bobby Fischer, anything, then we'll be done. That will be your, this is actually, yeah. So this one is the attendance, so this one I know who said what. And if you came late, just say I came late, that's fine. Okay, as long as you give some answer. Some people can type very fast. So by the way, that's not the father. Ben Kingsley is the chess instructor in Bobby Fischer. And Ben Kingsley is just an amazing actor. He got like multiple Oscar awards. Probably got like a best supporting actor award at least. Okay, can we stop now? 107 answers. I think we only have 107. So I'm going to finish this. And where's the board? Okay. That's all the fun is of the day today. Hopefully it's not too much. Okay. So what we're going to do now for the rest of the class today is we'll talk about, as I said, we'll talk about min-max, which I already talked about last time. I'm assuming that you already by this time actually watched the lecture that I asked you to watch, and I hope all of you also watched the alpha beta pruning example. You know, people for some reason think it's confusing, but actually if you view it as the non-dumb thing to do as a computer scientist, then it becomes quite easy to understand what's going on. And at least, it was a 4-minute video that explained alpha beta pruning. Hopefully, you were able to get that. And finally, we talk a little about depth limited min-max, which is basically what is used in alpha beta pruning. And then I actually spent some time on talking about evaluation functions versus limited depth min-max search. Okay. So we talked about this last time, about how we generate, and the first part of the lecture is I assume that the game is small enough that you extended it all the way until the leaf node, where each leaf node is essentially a known terminal board configuration. So you know what its value is from the max player's perspective. Okay, but as you figured out by now, for any realistic games, you cannot extend the game all the way to the end because, for example, for chess, it's known that if you extend the entire search tree from the beginning, they're about 10 power 150, 10 power 150 size search tree. And essentially, I think the number of atoms in the universe is less than 10 power 70 or something. So you can kind of get a sense that chess game can't be one brute force. Okay, so that's why we talk about basically considering situations, considering limited depth min-max search, where you only go to a partial depth, and then of course the board positions at the leaf level are no longer known wins versus losses. They are actually partial games positions. And so you need to use some kind of a heuristic to figure out how good it is from Max's point of view. That's that the heuristics there essentially are called evaluation functions. And there is an interesting history for example, if you contrast the two big things that happened in gameplay playing in this kind of deterministic games. One was Deep Blue in 1997, right? And exactly 20 years back. And other is AlphaGo, which just happened last year, and of course this year too. And those two basically are playing the deterministic games, and yet they actually wind up doing whether to do more search and less evaluation versus more evaluation and less search. Okay, we find out that just Deep Blue basically focused completely on very fast generation of the search tree and search of doing alpha beta pruning and everything. Okay, AlphaGo does that too, but it actually spends a lot more time on getting the evaluation function right. And the problem with evaluation functions are they have to be essentially, you have to ask quote unquote either experts saying, okay, here's a partial position, how good do you think it is? The experts are basically just as good as good. And so they will give some reasonable numbers about the evaluation. That's what was being done at the time of Deep Blue in 1997. And what changed by this year, 20 years later, is internet. Okay, we have web, and we have tons and tons of games that have been played, and they have online traces of those games on the web. Okay, so essentially AlphaGo could actually use those traces as examples and figure out what is the goodness of a particular board position based on all the experience it has seen. Okay, so it, in fact, AlphaGo spends a lot more time in computing the evaluation functions and then does all the search strategies. Slightly different, but very similar, very similarly inspired search strategies as we do. So that winds up being a big difference, and that also is explained by how the world changed in between. Okay, so that's of course min-max search. And then I want you to remember that there are these distinctions. First of all, when we went from single agent search to games, what is one part, one aspect of the agent's environment that definitely changed? When we looked at single agent search, we looked at static world, because the agent can look at the goal, go back and figure out the best path and just start executing it. Static world. We also looked at deterministic agents, because for each action there is a single, from a state if you take an action, a single use state will come. There is no uncertainty. Okay, static, deterministic, and then fully observable. Basically, the agent knew what its initial state was, and then it was able to use that information. Okay, so what is the one thing that definitely changed when we came from single agent search to games?
The existence of an adversary that's
Which basically makes it what?
non-deterministic.
No. So there are three things: static versus dynamic, stochastic, deterministic, stochastic, and fully versus partially observable. So when you went from single agent to games, the one thing that definitely changed is
fully versus partially observable.
what?
Fully versus partially observable.
No. So see, this is good to see, right? Chess, people see exactly what's going on the chessboard. So it's fully observable game. Okay. Basically, obviously, if nothing else, at least there were 3 options, and we have already shot down 2. So I'm hoping that you have the ability to realize that, the third is the answer, not D and E and F. Okay, as those other 2%. So it's actually, the word is no longer static. As I said, what makes games hard is you basically having an opponent. Okay, if you just take too long, things can still happen. So for example, even in chess, they'll say, yeah, it's your time to make a move. And then right after your move, the world changes, because it's not only you changing the world, it's also the opponent changing the world. So from your point of view, opponent changing the world is a dynamic changing of itself. So dynamic is the first thing that changes, which is why you don't have a column for dynamic versus static, because all games are dynamic. There is no non-dynamic game. The non-dynamic games would be really boring. That is you staring at the wall. Okay, and if the wall starts moving, that too becomes dynamic. Okay, so basically, given that all games are dynamic, then you can talk about, for example, how are they changing in terms of deterministic versus stochastic? That other two. Okay, and similarly, full versus partial information. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you don't talk about dynamism because